Welcome to the Power of the Cross, everyone. It's so good to have you all here with us, and we're going to do something a little bit different today. I'm sitting here with Brother Pharaoh Wilson from the Lighthouse Church, and also with Brother Gerald Crabb, a Dove Award winner, singer-songwriter, and a wonderful evangelist. Welcome to the Power of the Cross.
It's an honor to be here. Looking forward to what God's got in store today.
Amen.
We're going to start our interview by just asking Brother Crabb to just go ahead and just give us his testimony, which is a wonderful and powerful thing to hear. You guys need to just turn that radio up and listen close.
Man, you start thinking about my testimony, I really don't know where to start. I'm going to go way back, because I think sometimes it's those years way back there that kind of shape the other years in your life and your ministry and so forth. And God was doing things back then, and you didn't even realize He was preparing you for what you're going to be doing now. I grew up in a dysfunctional family, like most everybody else. Just most people won't admit it, but I did. My dad was an alcoholic all my life. I don't remember ever seeing him that he didn't have whiskey on his breath. He had trouble keeping jobs and staying out of trouble, getting locked up, losing his license, losing his car. And he and my mom ended up getting a divorce before I was a teenager. And Mom got with a friend who was being chased by the FBI. So we moved a lot. By the time I was 18, we had moved 47 times, and didn't go to school most of that time. We just, because we would stay somewhere a month and then we'd go somewhere else, and you wouldn't be there long enough to even go to school. So very little education. Saw a lot of things I shouldn't have seen, but went to church. Mom always took us to church, even through all of that. Being a dysfunctional family, and she taught me how to pray when I was a young kid, and it was just a simple prayer. Now I lay me down to sleep, but always at the end of that prayer it was like, Lord, please help my daddy quit drinking. I prayed that for 30 years. And when I was 16, I went to a little revival meeting because my mother told me I had to. I didn't want to. I had a little hot rod car and a girlfriend and a 8-track tape player and a Bread 8-track tape, and it was Friday night. I wanted to go to the drive-in, but she reminded me that we was in revival, so I went to church and got saved. The Lord saved me, and I never will forget. He spoke to me. I was mad at Mom all the way to church because I didn't want to go. Man, I wanted to go to the drive-in, and I never will forget. That little preacher preached. He was a little Methodist preacher, and he preached hellfire and brimstone. I didn't expect that. The Lord spoke to me and said, "You go, and many others will follow." He said that to me as clear as day. So I got up and went to the altar and gave my heart to the Lord. Didn't realize what He was talking about. Now I do. I've got kids in ministry everywhere. It's not unusual for one of them to call me and say, "Hey, Daddy, we had 100 saved tonight," So I know what he was talking about. But anyway, I'd known all my life that I was going to be a preacher. I knew when I was a kid. You would have asked me when I was 4 years old, "What are you going to do when you grow up?" Be a preacher, because I knew that. We played church, me and my sisters. I didn't have a brother. I had 4 sisters. And for playtime, we played church. We'd sing and I'd preach, and then I'd have to play paper dolls with them. No brothers, all sisters. And we would cut paper dolls out of the Sears and Roebuck catalog. We'd cut them people, and that'd be our paper dolls. And we'd play church with the paper dolls. We'd shout. They'd shout their heads off sometimes. Literally tear their heads off shouting. And I knew I was going to be a preacher. So when I got saved that night, I told the pastor. I said, I've always felt like the Lord wanted me to preach. Now, this was like on a Friday night. He said, "Well, I want you to preach for us Sunday night." I mean, I'd only been saved 2 days. So I did. I got up and spoke. It was terrible. But it was a beginning. And God bless. I got married when I was 18. By the time we was 22 or 3. I had 4 kids. 2 of them was twins, So, I evangelized, and then I began to pastor in the Church of God. So I pastored 5 churches in the Church of God, and was successful. God always blessed, man. I'm telling you, I never did stay nowhere long because I had the evangelist heart. I would go into church, maybe stay a year. If I stayed a year, is a long time, I stayed in one church 3 months. But God always blessed. But we struggled, It was like some people have the mentality that the preacher ought to be the poorest person in the church. They ought to just be the struggling one and help keep them humble, I guess. and we went through that. And that used to bother me because I would go into a church that was running 40, and in a year we were running 200. And some of the people working in there back in the 80s was making $30 and $40 an hour. And my kids are wearing tennis shoes that are tore all to pieces, and we don't have no insurance, and blah, blah, blah. And I had a pity party, and I got bitter, and I ended up backsliding over that. So I got out of church for 3 years, and I followed my dad's footsteps. I became a drunk. So that was some tough times. I learned a lot of things during that time. I learned what I'd always preached, that the devil would take you further than you plan to go and keep you longer than you plan on staying and cost you more than you plan on paying. And I learned that was true because I lost everything. I lost my family, went through a divorce, and it just kept going downhill. I'd go to these parties and drink and play music for them, and at first you'd think, boy, this is good, and it just got worse and worse. Every day it got worse. It didn't ever get better because the devil always leads down. That's the truth. There's no elevation in sin. It's always a decline. And it just kept getting worse, and about 3 years after going through that, working in a car wash, the Lord showed up. And first the devil showed up one day on a rainy day. I've told this story so many times I feel like everybody's heard it. But there are people that haven't, I'm sure.
Yes.
He showed up on a rainy day. I was sitting there, and he's like, you're such a loser, You failed God. You failed your family. You failed the church. You're a loser, And I'm like, you're right. And at this time, Brother Wilson, I'd got so bitter. I hated church. I hated church people. Couldn't cry. It got to where I was so hard, nothing would make me cry. And that's where I was at. And so then here's the devil carrying on this conversation. And he showed me this lake where I used to go fish, and he's like, you need to get in your car and just drive it right in that lake and get out of everybody's life, in their misery, in yours. And it wasn't 5 seconds till Jesus spoke to me and said, I love you. And I fell on my knees, and I just asked him to please forgive me, and instantly he did. And I cried. I hadn't cried in a while. But that changed my life.
Where the song, Please Forgive Me,
that's where it came from. I had no idea when I prayed that prayer that, like in probably 2 years, I would write that song. And my family would sing it all over the country, and it's sung all over the world now.
Thank you for listening to The Power of the Cross. We pray this message is a blessing to you. You can access our sermons at grenadachurch.com. We also ask for your financial support in helping us reach the world with the gospel. You can donate to our ministry by secure means at grenadachurch.com and click Donate. That's grenadachurch.com and click Donate. Now, back to the message.
I just tell this for the glory of God, but God's been good to us. Our ministry, that's where our ministry, the Crabb family, began, is telling the car wash story and telling what the Lord has done. We used to get calls from like TBN, Inspirational Network, James Robinson, and they wanted us to come on their program and tell the car wash story. So we did that, and the ministry was just launched from there. But the first year that the Crabb family sang and we sung Please Forgive Me, we sung in little churches. We started out singing in small churches. But that song was number one, and it was just nationwide. It was huge in Southern Gospel. And I started keeping up with how many people was being saved because of that song. We'd sing that song, Give an Invitation. In the first year, we saw over 2,000 saved.
Wow, amen.
Just from that one song. Wow. So what happened was God took all you've heard the old saying, if somebody gives you lemons, make lemonade out of it. And that the Lord, what the devil meant for harm, God turned it into good. All that stuff I went through, I started writing songs about it. Not intentionally, they just were coming through those experiences. And God used them. He came looking for me. Number one song, Please Forgive Me. If you go to Dollywood, to the Southern Gospel Hall of Fame, they've got the original lyrics, Please Forgive Me.
Oh, wow.
It is the highest number one song in the history of Southern Gospel music in points. It was that popular. All the stations put it at one. It was just huge. And it was God, He just launched that ministry.
Because people can relate, and really it touches their heart because of what the song says, because they're probably going through some of the same types of things.
Almost everybody has. Almost everybody at one time in their lives had to say, please forgive me.
When we first come into the church, when I was saved, and long before I knew you, one song during the service, and I won't go into the details, but my wife was touched by the Lord, and I can remember clearly the song Through the Fire. It played after a moment she was healed. And I'll one question I'll ask you today is, how did that song come into being?
I sat down at the piano one day, and I'm not a piano player, but I can play enough to write a song with. And I sat down at the piano, I hit G, and it was just like, He never promised the cross would not get heavy, and the hill would not be hard to climb. Those words came instantly. And honest to God, the hair stood up on my arm because I knew this is God. And I sat there and nothing else came. So I thought, I always kept a little recorder with me because back then you didn't have the cell phones with the recorders, and you had to, there's a little cassette recorder, and so I flipped that thing on. I said, let's do that again, So I sang that in there. And then I never could get anything else, so I started looking in the neighborhood. The kids all lived close by me at that time. So I went and started going to their house and said, hey, you got to hear this. You got to hear this. So I tried and tried for weeks and then turned into months to finish that song and just couldn't do it. So one time we were singing in Mississippi, and this lady came up to the table. She was pregnant, and she was holding this child. And you could tell, she's probably having a rough time. And she's like, would you pray for me? And I said, yes, ma'am, I sure would. I said, what are we praying about? And she said, this child I'm holding, this my child, and is getting ready to have brain surgery. She said, my husband just walked off and left us. And she said, I'm pregnant with another child. She said, but I'm trusting in the Lord. And boy, what she did, God said, now you know what to write about. And so I went home and finished that song because of what she said. And that's where that came from.
So many times I've questioned certain circumstances and things I could not understand. Many times in trials, weakness blurs my vision, then my frustration gets so out of hand. Oh, but it's then I am reminded, church, I ain't never been forsaken. I ain't never had to stand one test alone. When I look at all those past victories, the Spirit rises up in me, and it's through the fire my weakness is made strong. He never promised the cross would not get heavy, and and the hill would not be hard to climb. He never offered victories without fighting, but he said hell would always come in time. Just remember when you're standing in the valley of decision and the adversary says, give in, just hold on. My Lord will show up, yes He will. He'll take you through the fire again. I know that in myself that I will surely perish, but we're not in ourselves. If I trust the mighty hand of God, He's gonna shield that flame again. I know He's gonna do it again. He never promised that the cross would not get heavy and the hill would not be hard to climb. He never offered victories without fighting. He said hell would always come in time. Just remember when you're standing in the valley of decision and the adversary says, give in, just hold on. My Lord will show up, yes He will. He'll take you through the fire again. Just hold on. My Lord will show up, yes He will. He will take you through the fire again. Yes He will. Yes He will. Yes He will. Thank God He's faithful.
The song has been, I don't care if it's Adam out singing, Aaron out singing, Jason out doing concerts. Those people want to hear Through the Fire. Bill Gaither told him one time, he said, don't ever do a concert without Through the Fire. Coming from Bill Gaither, he's always been one of my heroes, but he said that's probably one of the best songs he ever heard. So I took that as a compliment. But it was a God song, and it's been sung all over the world. And, we kept getting these testimonies. I wrote a book, Through the Fire. We kept hearing all these testimonies. This one little kid, Luke Armbruster, he was out hunting, and he wrecked his four-wheeler, the little ATV, and it literally tore his face off. And he was in a coma for, I forget now, a month anyway, and they was like, he's not going to make it. There's so many things wrong with him. But Nate says, like, if he ever comes out of this coma, expect him to be out of his mind, saying crazy stuff. Well, after, I think it was 40 days in a coma, he comes out of that coma and he looks over and says, I love you, Mama. They asked him, did he remember anything while in that coma? And he said, yeah, I remember. And he started quoting some of the words of Through the Fire.
Wow.
Oh, my.
Man, we just got so many testimonies from things just like that, how God used that song. And, there was a lot of other stories that wasn't in the book, from that song. It's just amazing, really.
Thank you once again for listening to The Power of the Cross. Our desire is for you to grow in the knowledge of the Lord. We have a vast library of teachings on our website available for free download. Go to grenadachurch.com and click Sermons. If you have questions or prayer requests, go to grenadachurch.com and click Contact. Now, back to the message.
Last night you were talking, and I would love you to tell this story. It's really a testimony again, but Hal Leonard. I grew when I was young and coming up playing guitar. I knew who Hal Leonard was, all the books. But it was like you said last night. It was, the instructions for blues guitar or Boston or the Eagles songbook. But they're a huge publisher. But I'd like you to share that story again. That just, especially about the pen, that really amazed me.
Well, I got this. It was an email and a telephone call. Both. Want to know if I would be interested in them doing a songbook with my songs. And the name of the company was Hal Leonard. As a kid, I played the same music you're talking about there. So in the back of my mind, I'd seen that name somewhere, but it didn't really register at the time. And they was interested in doing a songbook, and I'm like, there's 10 or 13 of my songs. I said, yeah, I'm interested, and got off the phone and began to research what Hal Leonard was, and it's the largest, I think, the largest secular print company in the world. And like you say, they do anything from Mozart to Led Zeppelin, AC/DC, to the Eagles, the Beatles, White Christmas, all them Broadway musicals and
Basic
stuff.
blues licks.
But yeah, guitar lessons, but not Southern gospel.
Exactly.
No Southern gospel. So after I called my publisher in Nashville, I said, have you ever heard of Hal Leonard? Yeah. And I told him that they was interested in doing a songbook, and he's like, man, that is incredible. So I got back with them. And they said, okay. He said, we're going to let you be in charge of the cover. And I was like, that's really cool. So I decided what I was going to do for the cover. And my wife just kind of chimed in, I think, through the help of the Lord. And she told me what I needed to do for the cover. And I was like, yeah, that's a great idea. What I do when I write songs is I keep the original lyrics. And it's cool because you scratched out half of it and rewrote it and put new words in. So I got all the lyrics of those old songs and laid them out. And we had a photographer take a picture. And on top of those lyrics, I laid this pen that I had. And took the picture and sent it to the people at Hal Leonard. And the lady was like, yeah, we love it, and so forth. And they did the book. Now, the significance of the pen is this. I was told one time by someone that was very involved in the industry that I was finished, that I would never write again. No one would ever record any of my songs, and so forth. So that really beat me up that day. I had a pity party and so forth, and okay, I'm through, I'm finished, no more songwriting. And I had called my daughter-in-law and told her, what had happened. And so in a little while, she called me back and she told me about a revival that was taking place in Kentucky, and that I really should go. And I didn't want to go, I wanted to stay there in my pity party and just have a big time, beat myself up. So she talked me into going. She said, they don't know you. They don't know the Crabb family. They're not, you just go and be ministered to. So I go, and I get there, and I wasn't that impressed with the music. I didn't like it. I was raised in old-time Pentecostal music, and the old-time Pentecostal music is real kin to rock music. I mean, the old rockabilly, that's kind of old-time Pentecostal music. Well, this is this new modern, praise and worship where they just repeat the words over and over and so forth. I wasn't impressed. Went there with a critical spirit. So I sat there, and then they took the offering. I had the guest speaker to speak, who was a lady prophet, and she got up. She was from New Mexico. She got up and spoke, and it was real vanilla. You know what I'm saying? Vanilla.
Vanilla.
Yeah.
Just plain.
Real vanilla. Wasn't too excitement in it, and I'm used to the excitement as well. I like that. So I'm like, man, I'm not real impressed with this right now. So she spoke about 15 or 20 minutes, and then she started prophesying to some people. It was pretty generic as vanilla as well, But then she looked back at me, and I knew when she looked back, I knew. Okay, it's my turn.
Yeah.
I knew it. God just shows you that. And she came back there, and she pointed her finger at me, and she said, when you walked in tonight, she said, there was a black cloud hanging over your head. And I was like, yep. She said, you will ride again. And I about fell out of my seat then. She didn't know me, but God knows me. And he had spoke to her. And she said, you will ride again. And she goes up to the stage and I guess digs in her purse and brings me this real beautiful pen and hands it to me. And so I take this pen, and then she says, you will ride again. The blood of Jesus declares it. And she took her hand and held them out where I could see the palms of her hand, and drops of blood started coming out of the palms of her hand.
That's amazing.
That's true.
And I wrote again. I've written, I've had 26 number ones now. And the year of 2011, I had the Song of the Year at the Dove Awards. It had been 35 years since a Southern Gospel song had won.
Wow. What song was that?
Sometimes I Cry.
Sometimes I Cry.
So the devil's a liar. He tried to stop it, but God had another plan.
And here's Gerald Crabb with Sometimes I Cry.
I look the part, blend in with the rest of the church crowd. I know the routine, pack a list of the Bible studies in town. Watch Christian TV, I know all the preachers and their cliches. I've been born again, without a doubt, I know that I'm saved. But sometimes I hurt, sometimes I cry, sometimes I can't get it right, no matter how hard I seem to try. Sometimes I fall down, stumble over my own disguise. I try to look strong as the whole world looks on, but sometimes alone I cry. I try to speak faith, never give the devil 1 inch to get in. I do worship and praise, let everybody know just where that I stand. On the back of my ride is a fish and a cross for the world to see. I know God is good all of the time, that's no doubt for me. But sometimes I hurt, sometimes I cry, sometimes I can't get it right, no matter how hard I seem to try. Sometimes I fall down, I stumble over my own disguise. I try to look strong as the whole world looks on, but sometimes alone I cry. Sometimes I fall down, I stumble over my own disguise. I try to look strong as the whole world looks on, but sometimes alone I cry. I try to look strong as the whole world looks on, but sometimes alone I cry.
This is Pastor Wilson from Power of the Cross. We would love to hear from you. You can drop us a line with your questions, comments, and prayer requests at P.O. Box 2441, Grenada, Mississippi 38902. Again, that is P.O. Box 2441, Grenada, Mississippi 38902. Or you can go to the internet at grenadachurch.com and click contact, and there you'll find a secure form to message us, or you can just simply email us at radio@grenadachurch.com. God bless.